Hey everybody, welcome to Literary Gladiators. My name is Sam, and I am from the booktube channels Sarcasm and Sci-Fi and the Drunken library. If you are interested in the things I have to say, or you're interested in intoxicated book reviews, you can check out either of those channels. But today I am here to participate in the Alphabet Roundtable Read here on this channel, and I was given the letter A, which is a good or a bad thing depending on how you look at it. I am going to be reviewing or discussing the book Artemis by Andy Weir. I read this on ebook, so I don't have a cool physical copy to hold up, but I do have my Kindle. Ooh. This is the second Andy Weir book I've ever read. I have also read The Martian, as have many people, and that one I absolutely loved. It was like my top book of 2020. I'm still talking about it 4 years later. And this one I also really enjoyed. Andy Weir does this thing where he brings like real science into his like more action-packed or suspenseful, ridiculous premise science fiction stories, so you can kind of see how we might really get to that place. So the premise of this book specifically is essentially a heist in a city on the moon. So we follow our main character, Jazz, who is a porter or like a delivery person, and she also has a little bit of a side hustle going on where she works with a friend of hers on Earth to smuggle illegal goods into Artemis, which is the first and, to this point, only city on the moon. And illegal goods can be any number of things. A lot of the time it's like flammable objects, but she will smuggle those things in because she has a friend who helps load shipments from Earth to the moon. And then she like marks them up and charges people who want to purchase these items. And that's kind of how she makes her living. Much to the disappointment of her father, who's like a master welder and really wanted that for her because she had a lot of potential and talent for that. But she just wasn't interested in working very hard for a very small, barely livable living. So she has spent her whole adult life trying to find like workarounds to make her life easier so she can make like more money for less effort. And it's actually kind of funny because she ends up throughout the course of the book putting in like way more effort, but that's kind of neither here nor there. The heist comes into play because one of the clients that she frequently smuggles cigars for is a super wealthy businessman, and he wants to take over the aluminum production that's taking place by one large company on the moon, because oxygen is a byproduct of aluminum production, which the moon is a vacuum. So they need that oxygen to supply to the city. And he wants to take it over. But in order to do that, because the company that is currently doing it has like a contract with the city, they have to sabotage the production, make them be in breach of that contract so that he can then swoop in and take over. He offers to pay our main character Jazz like $1 million, they're called slugs, but it's like the moon currency, so essentially like $1 million to sabotage their production. And she agrees to do it because $1 million is a lot of money and she wants to get a better place to live and be set for life. So she sets out to sabotage the aluminum production, and in the process, she gets caught, nearly dies, has to run back to the city and sneak back in through like an airlock, which is, you know, not that easy to do. And then she gets busted by like a former friend of hers. And then he's just like, well, I won't rat you out, but like, maybe don't do sketchy illegal shit. And then the job was unfinished, so she's not going to get paid her $1 million, so she has to find out a new way to do that. And in the process, a bunch of other kind of crazy stuff unfolds, where like she finds out that that company that's currently producing all the aluminum is actually being run and is like a front for the mob. And so then they're out to get her because she's like costing them a lot of money. So there's like a hit out on her and she has to go into hiding. And then she's also running from like the police because, you know, illegal activity. And she's worried because if she gets caught, she's not so much concerned about like doing jail time because that's not really a penalty in Artemis. She's worried about being deported back to Earth. And she's been on the moon since she was 6, so she's like not adjusted to Earth's gravity, and she doesn't really know what life was like there. So for her, that's like a terrible thought. So throughout this time, she's trying to escape the like mob hitmen. And then as she's doing that, she uncovers a much bigger sort of plot that's going on. And it's that there's a new type of cable for transferring data, like a fiber optic cable for transferring data that has like no lag time, but the materials and the production methods needed to make it can only be done in the lower gravity environment. So it's an ideal industry for the city of Artemis. And it's sort of an interesting exploration of capitalism, colonization, how economies are born, how economies grow, how economies die. And in the case of this one, it's like, what is best? Who should be in control of these things? And what would it look like if, say, the mob were in charge of this huge industry? What would it look like if it was run by the government? What would it look like if some private citizen were in charge? And you can really see it because it's on such a small scale that it unfolds very quickly. Another thing that I personally thought was kind of interesting about the story, because I, generally speaking, tend to be more of a character-based reader than a plot-based reader, is that this book is super, super plot heavy, right? Like there's all these big action scenes. There's a heist on the moon. She's breaking into factories. She's got to go out into this vacuum and zero gravity. And then there's a rip in her EVA suit and all these crazy things happen. But because it's a first-person narrator, and because a lot of the plot sort of hinges on this character who is like a deeply flawed and like broken person, it really hinges on her kind of resolving some of her inner turmoil and issues. She really has to like come to terms with and forgive herself for some things that have happened in her past in order for her to make amends with other people. And those other people that she ends up needing to make amends with are people she has to rely on to sort of accomplish her mission. And so you see a lot of character growth. And even though she grows, she, by the end, doesn't really change. She just kind of becomes a slightly more whole version of the person she was at the beginning of the book. She just kind of changes how she approaches her relationships, and it makes for a much like more complete life for her, or at least that's kind of what you're led to believe by the end of the book. So I really enjoyed this. You can interpret it in a lot of different ways, I think, from reading it, and I would recommend it. I gave this book 4 stars. It was a good time. It was a quick read. It was very fast-paced, and it did not feel like it was like at no part of it really felt like it was dragging or anything like that, although there was definitely some like telling not showing, which is not my favorite thing, but I think for this book sometimes it was a little bit necessary. It was absolutely worth a read, and I really liked it. I hope you enjoyed this review, and come find me on the internet and let me know if you end up reading it. Have a great day.